lesson we're going to be looking at John Mayer's Heart of Life, specifically the live version from the Where the Light Is live DVD. Note that this tune is recorded and performed one half step down, so make sure your guitar is tuned one semitone down on each string. E becomes E flat, A becomes A flat, all the way down. Apologies in advance for teaching it in this alternate tuning, but I felt the song, it just feels better when it's in that area. So one concession I will make though, I'm not going to call this a C sharp, I'm going to refer to it as a D. So whatever shape it usually occupies on a guitar tuned to A440, that's what I'm going to refer to it as. Even though if you went to a tuner right now, that's a C sharp, I'm calling it a D. So let's get started. We can't talk about Heart of Life without talking about the slap flick technique, or chuck and pluck, or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of videos out there where people will show what they think he does, and I can't say I agree with them all, but I know what I see, and I'll show you some slowed down stuff of what I see him doing in this particular song. He's only using two fingers. He's using his index finger and his thumb, and we have this kind of thing going on. And the slap flick is the slapping of the thumb at the same time flicking out with the first finger, usually around the middle two strings. In this case, we're doing a D broom handle grip, so we have our thumb on E10, our first finger on B10, and then we have the other two fingers on D12 and G12. So we're plucking the outside strings with the first finger and thumb, and then coming down and with the thumb slapping and at the same time flicking the middle strings here. If you just want to practice this and get it down, it's integral to the entire song. And don't forget that nice slide coming up. So as we see in the video, depending on how he feels that day, he's either splaying the fingers he's not playing without, like this, or he's curling them. I tend to curl them. And if you have a pick, Mayer keeps his between the first and second fingers. That kind of renders the second finger useless for any intricate finger picking, so it's more of an indication that he's only using the first finger. Because anything involving the second finger would cause the pick to fly out, so he rarely drops them. So that's that. This finger, this thumb, for the whole thing. Let's look at the rhythm for the intro and the verse. There's lots of tiny variations, which I'll get into later, but starting off, the best bang for the buck is probably measure 30, the start of the second verse. Sounds like this. Ending with that nice slide up. So let's take a look at this slow. So we hear the slap flicks in there, and sometimes it's the tail end of an arpeggiated set of notes, like bass note, second note, and then the slap flick completes it. So instead of going, you're going like that. A lot of that in this song. So that's the work at the D chord. So we're starting by plucking the outside strings. We have the E10 and the B10. We pluck those together, come down with our first slap flick. So we're slapping with the thumb on the low E muted, and then sounding the two middle strings, the D12 and the G11. After the flick, the index finger is out and can actually do a little upstroke on the B10. So, and then our thumb is ready to do the bass note on the E string, and then our first finger is going to arpeggiate the D12, and then as it plucks up, it's ready for a slap flick down. And we're going to concentrate on getting that G11. So far. So notice how the slap flick completes the arpeggio instead of where, like that, kind of neat. And then it's a simple case of hitting the two outside strings. Slap flick, pinky comes down on the B12, last slap flick, and then we're done. So And it's really, that's the foundation for all the other chords. The next thing we do is we slide down to the B minor position. And same kind of rhythm. This time our pinky hits the B10, like that, so. So slow on the B minor part. Outside strings, slap flick, hitting the two middle strings, which is the D9 and the G7. And we're going to go up on the B7, arpeggiate, slap flick, outside strings, slap flick, pinky comes down at the B10, and we have our thumb fretting the E7, last slap flick. So those two together slow. Then we're going to slide all the way down to F sharp minor. And that rhythm is sliding up to the G major, outside strings first, and then down into a D chord with an F sharp in the bass, to an A. Let's take a look at that, starting from the F sharp. So I'm doing a broom handle grip, thumb is on the E2, and then we have the octave here on the D4, and with my first finger barring these three. So we do the outside fretted strings, we do the B2 and the E2, slap flick in the middle, sounding these two notes. Grab that B2, arpeggiate, slap flick. Then we shift up to the G major. Broom handle grip, thumb on the third fret of the E, and then we have our fingers stacked. First finger on the B3, G4, D5. Same rhythm, outside strings. Then we slide down to this D. We do a D. With just these strings here, we have the G2 and the B3, and our thumb is doing the E2. Same rhythm again. We're actually plucking on the open D here, which is nice. And then just a regular A chord. And as you do the last slap flick, slide it up here. So that progression that you see in the intro is also played under the verses. I hate to see you cry, lying there in that position. Just so you know where you are. Slow last time. And then lather, rinse, repeat into the next part. For a good example of the chorus, we can look at measure 38, which sounds like this. This is one of my favorite parts of the song. I'll play through it slow, then we'll talk through it. Then we repeat that a couple times. So what we're doing there is an A major, broom handle grip, and the high note we're going to pluck at the same time as the bass note is actually one that we usually use a slap flick with. We're kind of coming down a bit lower. So we're hitting the E5 and the G6, like that. And then we're going to do the slap flick. we're going to try to hit that D7 like that. And then when we take our pinky and we put it on the G7 like that, bass note, and then come up on the high B5. And the slap flick that follows, we actually lift our pinky off and we go back to that, hitting the G6 and D7 with the slap flick. So then we change our position a bit, and we're going to hit these two outside notes, the A5 and the B7, like that. And we do this. So outside notes, dead slap, not a slap flick, no note sound, and then we have this barred 5th fret, and we hit the B5, A5, and the G7, followed by a slap to finish that off. Both of them together. When you're doing this part, don't bar that right off the top, because when you do the slap thunk here, you'll hit some notes that are going to smell bad. So I kind of arch my fingers. I make sure that this is not a slap flick, but just a thunk before barring and doing the. After that slap, we go to the G at the 3rd position here, and our outside notes are the B3 and the E3, and we arpeggiate them like we've been doing with the bass note, first finger, slap flick, and then the first finger grabs the high note like that. Back up to the A. Outside notes. 3rd pass. We pick a different note for the high note here. Instead of picking that B3, we're picking this G4 and the E3. Then we're going back to a new chord now. That is a D. So we have the G2, B3, and our thumb is on the E2. So it's a D with an F sharp in the bass. So here's the G. And then the outside notes we're picking there are the G2 and the E2. Then we go to an A. We slide it up to the D position. And we're finishing off with just plucking those two outside strings like that. We actually, at this part, this slap flick, the two middle strings are ringing out, and we just kind of add to them by pulling the two outside ones. So let's just play through that. And that is the chorus. We get to measure 55, which is the 3rd and last chorus. There's another variation where he goes to the G chord, where he starts hitting the E5 as part of that arpeggio. Very nice. So that's from the pain flows your heart to the ground. Love beats the whole thing around. And we do this a couple times from the G to the F sharp. Repeat it a couple of times. Or this. And then we go back down. So let's look at that part. Let's take a deep dive into measure 63. So let's look at the two chord shapes we have here. Let's play the first three so we see what they sound like. So we have these two shapes, and we just alternate them up the neck in a certain order, so that they're diatonic to the key of D and they sound right with all these open strings around. So the first shape, we have our second finger on the D2 and our third finger on the B2. And I refer to that as the major shape because it's kind of using notes from the A major chord of the root here. And then this one, this is the second shape. We have our second finger on the D4, first finger on the B3. And I call that the minor shape because if you do a B minor here, after the A, that's where these notes kind of fit. So these two shapes, first major shape is stacked, it's all within the same fret. Second one has a fret between them like that. And the root note, the lower one, is forward all the time. So let's look at the positions and I'll refer to them by the root notes. So we're second position, fourth, fifth, seventh, ninth, 11th, 12th, 14th, 16th. That's how we go up. And the order is the major shape, minor, major, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Anyone that knows chord theory is probably screaming out, you forgot diminished, but we'll talk about that. Let's talk about that at the end of the video. We'll talk about what that order is and why it's important. But for now, we're just going to learn the tune. Let's play the first three chords and see how they stack up. You'll notice that on the second slap flick, I'm actually sliding up into the next one. So looking at that little pattern, starting with the first chord, we pluck the two outside notes, the open A and the B2. Then we come down with a slap flick. Index finger hits the B2. And our thumb hits the A. First finger hits the D2, and then we immediately slap flick that same D2 and slide up to the fourth fret of the D. You have a nice kind of double pick on that D2, which is nice. So the first one is an upstroke, and then you downstroke, slap flick it, and go up into the next position. So after you do that, you're in position to put your first finger on the B3 and repeat the same thing. And then you're sliding into that major shape on the fifth, in the fifth position. And we're in the 7th fret now, another major shape. And we're in the minor shape, 9th fret. Also in the minor shape, 11th fret. And then 12th fret, 14th. That's as high as we get. So we have the minor shape starting on the 16th fret, sliding back down now, same thing, 14th fret. And we do it all again. I believe this is where he's singing, we're in repair, we're not together, but we're getting there. And he does that one more time, all the way up, all the way back down. And then when you get to the 4th position, you kind of arpeggiate that, because you're done. Then you strum the final A chord here with the open G. Then he kind of goes between the B2 and the open G, and he has a little tapping at the end. And that's the end of John Mayer's guitar parts. So those are pretty much the three main parts to play the entire tune, but it's a very generic version. There's tons of variations, which I'm going to go into now. You can throw these in if you want. I like to. I hear them in the piece, and they're interesting to me. It's not a simple case of just taking these two the verse and the chorus and playing them all the way through. It's never that simple. He's always changing things up. So right off the top of measure 1, he omits the first high outside note. So instead of going, he just plucks the bass there. And then he does the same thing on the B minor, just the bass note. So we don't have the We have everything else is okay and the same. And even the second pass, same thing, bass note. What he does there, he doesn't even do the, he goes and just sticks with the bass note. So that's measure 5 is. We've omitted that little movement. Instead it's just, instead of. So there's all these tiny little things that he throws in there that you can choose to do or do not. There's other variations in measure 9 and 10. This is the first verse. Instead of going, he sneaks this D12 in here. And this happens a couple times, usually when he's singing. So it's instead of, it's, see how that profoundly changes up the whole rhythm? It's very interesting. So that's measure 9. And normally we hear, but instead he goes. I've notated it, the D12 in a bracket because it's a very low note. It's not a held note or anything, but it is there and it does throw the rhythm off a tiny bit. Very interesting. Same thing in the B minor part. He does it again with a D7. In measure 10, there's this variation. Slow. So our slap flick in the end there is almost 3 notes of a chord. After that part, we're hitting this slap flick on these 3 notes. So we have the B10, G7, and the D9. And then we come back and hit the 2 outside notes, the B10 and the E7. And off with a slap. Measure 13 also has a nice variation. So we actually heard him bend up that B12 when he's pulling the 2 outside notes. We have this. Again, that little D12 sneaks in there before the first slap flick. Right here. We're doing there as on that slap flick preceding the bend. We're hitting another 3 notes. Those notes are the B12, G11, and the D12. After that, we're hitting the 2 outside notes. We're doing the B12 and the E10, but we're bending that B12 up, returning it back to pitch, and then following up with the slap flick, centering on the 2 middle notes. Very cool. And that's the second variation at measure 14. Starting to add an E9 there. So measure 14. So coming off the second part of that, we have this outside notes here, the slap flick coming up. We're adding our pinky on the B10, and we're actually hitting those 3 notes again. After that, we're going to pluck the outside notes, but this time the outside note is an E9 and the E7. And instead of just plucking outright, we're going to pluck, but kind of drag our finger over the 2 notes beside that E9. So the B7 and the G7, same time sounding the bass note. So like that. I really like the melody that adds. Very nice thing underneath. In measure 50, Mayer is playing the intro verse during the solo that which we'll get into. So Mayer's playing the verse intro, and right down here, before he starts it again, did you hear that? He does a little country thing to get back up to the D, and that is in measure 50. So we're doing a slap. Once we do the outside notes on the A, we have the open A and then the B2. We're doing a slap flick. We're hitting the G2 and the B2. Then we're just adding our finger on the B3 to sound these two notes. And then two open strings at the bottom, the B and the E. And then we can slide our hand up, because we're not fretting anything. That's the nice thing about that, to get back to the D. So, measure 50. Slap flick, and then start all over again. He only does it once, but it's such a country element in a kind of pseudo-country song. Here's another variation that isn't even in this version of the song, but it's cool. When he's by himself playing it on an acoustic guitar, he sometimes emulate the guitar melody from Guitar2 at the same time. It sounds like this. So he's doing the and like that, so real slow. Yeah. So we're doing the normal intro, but in the next part we're going to the E9, plucking the E10 and the high E9 at the same time, and then the slap flick is just flicking the E10. That's what we're going for. And then in the B minor part, we're fretting with our pinky the G9, and then we're slap flicking the B7, and then we're going to pluck the E7, and then come back down with a slap flick on the B10, like that. Like that. And when you combine these, you've just played the melody from the electric guitar on your one single acoustic guitar, in this case an electric. Very cool, I love it when he does that. So the Guitar2 part, starting in measure 5, the second guitarist has a slightly overdriven sound, and we have this coming in at measure 5. So starting on B10 to the B12, bend it up, catch the E10, and then come all the way down to the B7. Down to the B5, back to the 7, then we're bending up the B10, coming back down, and before hitting the G6, hammer on from B6 to B8, then the B7, sliding from the 9th fret of the G to the 7th fret, and then hitting the D7. I kind of do a double slide, so I fret both the G and D strings at the 9th fret, but I only pluck the G9 into the G7, and then I'm already fretting the D7, and I end off like that. Remember, lots of vibrato, and some of the notes are staccato, meaning they're cut off quickly. So Guitar2 during the chorus, this is measure 17 to 20. So we're just at the 14th fret of the G. Hold that for the whole measure almost. Then we come in with a slide to the B15, and then pluck it at the beginning of the next measure. Then we go back to G14. We do a slide from G16 to 18, and then we hit 17 on the B, and 17 on, and 15 on the B. So from the top. Lots of vibrato. See, these are nice simple parts. Continuing guitar part 2 in the chorus, measure 21. This is during the lyric, no, it won't all be the way it should. So we're at the G14, sliding from G19 to G17 to 19, and then striking in the G19. Hammer on from 16 to 18, back to the G14, D14, and then G19. Hammer on from 16 to 18, and then back to 14, 2 on the D14, and then finally ending off with a single note on the D12. There's a, you almost want to go, is good, of life is good, but he only hits one note at that final G12, but there's a temptation to hit 2 on there. One more time. Measure 47 has the guitar solo played by Guitar3 using a pick. Sounds like this. That's the first 4 measures. Let's take that as a chunk. So we're bending on the B17, bending it up again, hitting it unstruck, coming down to the 15th fret, and then on the G16 we're bending that up, and then coming down to the 14. Then the B17, bending up to the G17, so that G16, bending it up twice. So. Then we're going to do a little hammer on from the G17 to 16, ending on the B15. And then we do bends on the 17. And then we struck it, bent up, and bend it back down to its original pitch. From the top one more time. Continuing with measure 51. It ends very much like the last one did with that bend at the 17th fret. So we're doing a bend on the B17, and we're grabbing with our pinky the E17, bending the pre-bent B17 down to the 15th fret, bending the G16, grabbing with our pinky the B17, bending the G16 twice, coming back to 14, and then bending the 16 twice again. Hammer on from 14 to 16, ending on the B15, and then ending off with that same B17 bend up, struck and bend down. So slow. That wasn't very good. Make sure it sounds there. I don't go into a lot of detail on what guitar 2 and 3 do during the verses and choruses too much. A lot of times they're just playing different variations of the chords, but playing the higher notes of them to stay out of Mayer's way, because he's handling most of the bass duties. So just guitar 2 can grab the top end of those chords. It'll sound nice. But Robbie McIntosh does some nice stuff in the chorus. I've got an example in measure 55 where he's doing this. Which is beautiful. So he's starting off with this, the high part of that A major chord. So the D7, G6, B5, into this barred 7th fret D all the way down. That's the D chord, and then he does this leading B10 and then the series of pull-offs and arpeggios here. Let's do that to super nice stuff. So again, A, D with the leading B10, then a hammer on from B7 to 8, and then the G7 back to the B10. Your third finger will fret the D9, and then you just keep arpeggiating it until you run out of measure right there. And the nice part is that leading B10. Similarly in measure 57. So that's a really nice one. So the same little chord intro. So that's B7 to 8 on hammer-on, hitting the G7, coming back to the 8, and then hammering, pulling off from 9 to 7 on the G, and then a little hammer-on all the way up from 7, 8, 9, 8, 7, ending on the G9. That even sounds nice with a leading note, although he doesn't do it here. Continuing with measure 59, even more neat stuff. So there, instead of doing those chords, he sticks to the top 3 strings and does a little chord hammer on. So we have the second finger on the G6, and then we have the first finger barring the B5 and E5. Strike that, and then we do a chord hammer on to the 7th fret on the G7 and B7 using our third finger and pinky. So, and then we grab the 2 top notes, the E5 and the B7 after that. I'll loop that a couple times. Before shifting into the 7th position, we have this. Probably best to look at the tab for that because it gets a bit fiddly. And then he ends off with that. So let's just do that again, starting at measure 59. Just full of tasty bits in Guitar 2's repertoire. Okay, so in the video I'd go back and kind of talk to some of this stuff. There's a couple questions we want to answer. Why is this in the key of D? Actually it's in the key of C sharp, but we're going to call it D because we're talking about the 10th fret of the low E string in this example. Don't forget that I'm tuned down a half step. So this song is in D because the chords that are used in it are all related to the D major scale. And then we had that other question, why is this like major, minor, major, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, in that order all the time? Well, that's also a major scale thing. So if we look at the D major scale, and I hate the fact that I'm tuned down a half step. If anyone else is coming to this video with a standard tuned guitar, they're going to hate me. Let's call that the D major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Alright, let's look at the first note. That's the most important one. It's a root, that's D. And then we look at the third. 1, 2, 3. That's the second most important note. And then we go 3 up from that. 1, 2, 3 to the 5th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we stack them going this way, 1, 3, 5. That's a D major chord. any way you shake it. It's got a first, a third, and a fifth. So that's D major. So if we look at the next note in the D major scale, which is E, let's do that 3-5 thing again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's stack those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sounds a bit sadder, eh? That's because that's an E minor. So that's why we have a D major followed by a E minor. Let's go to the next one. So let's go up to the third note of the D major scale, which is F sharp. And let's go up a third and then a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So F sharp, here's the third, here's the fifth. Does that sound happy or sad? Do the eyebrow test. Sounds sad to me. Well, that's an F sharp. That's an F sharp minor. So we have D major, E minor, F sharp minor. What do you think the next one's going to be? You never get 3 minor in a row. You never get 3 major in a row. The next one is going to be G major. Let's test that out. D, E, F sharp, G. Let's go up 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can already tell my eyebrows tell me that this is happy. That's a major. And we know that. Now we're getting into some of the chords that we've used in the song. We use a G in this song, do we not? We also use an F sharp minor in the song. Like. So do we have to go higher? Let's go to the next one. D, E, F sharp, G, A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sounds happy to me. That is a major. So far we have D major, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major. We have this A major in the song. So we have the A major to D major to D major to G major. So that's why we have chords in an order like major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major, like that. And this is why this thing is like this. When we get here, we're in a D major. So the next one's going to be minor, minor. Then we're in the G here. Major, major, because we're at the A. Then we're minor. This is the B, yeah, and etc. all the way up. So that's why each note has a corresponding chord, and that chord is either major or minor, depending on its order in the major scale. Minor scales have a whole different order for the major, minor, minor, major, but most of the time we're talking about major keys, and we have this major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, and then major. That diminished thing, no one really talks about it. We sometimes substitute a minor for that, sometimes a major. And this thing here, I believe they substitute a major. That's kind of weird. We won't talk about that. But the reason the seventh one is always, the seventh degree of the scale is always diminished, is just the way the notes pan out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's go up a third. 1, 3, 4, 5. So, yeah. It's diminished. It sounds weird. It's not a major, not a minor. It's diminished. We don't talk about it. So that is essentially why we know this thing is in D major for all intents and purposes, and also why these two-note chord shapes alternate between major and minor shapes in a predetermined order. Works for everything. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. You caught me eating icing. I baked a cake today because it's Canada Day tomorrow. Yep. This is what keeps me going, so I can transcribe all these songs. Yowza.